I'm interested in just about anything. I'm particularly interested in STEM courses, especially chemistry and math, but I found I really enjoy literature, especially British literature. So I did my project on Beowulf. I just picked which subjects I liked the most. I found something unique about each subject that I was particularly drawn to, and I found projects that were associated with what I really liked about my classes. Well, I wanted to do something unique, and I figured black holes, that's pretty cool. So I wanted to do a project that associated Calculus 2 with black holes, and I found this project where I had to find the limit of work that would be required to pull an object from a singularity, and I discovered that it's impossible because it would require an infinite amount of energy.
My project is a 3D model of the Globe Theatre in London. I made a little tiny miniature model of it for my Theatre 1030 class, which is Intro to Theatre, for my professor Michael Golubeski. Doing an honors project it helped me a lot. It was really great to read about Shakespeare, and I got to research the Globe Theatre and its history. I would recommend that students do honors projects. It looks great on your transcript, and as you can see by my honors project, it's fun.
So I did 2 projects. I did one in organic chemistry. We actually made luminol, and then the second experiment was a middle school lab in the box experiment, and we made a friction lab for middle schoolers, and we're going to send it their way. So I actually wrote up the manual for this lab. I think it's awesome, especially if you enjoy a class, because you get to kind of dive a little bit deeper, and obviously it looks very good on your resume and your transcript and things like that, but it's a lot of fun to do something outside of the classroom that isn't necessarily for a grade, but you get to learn a little bit more.
At this point, we'll begin our after-dinner presentations, starting first with Kelly Bigger, who will be speaking on teaching probability games, a project sponsored by Elizabeth Weaver.
Wow, we had a great turnout tonight. It's kind of intimidating standing up here speaking in front of so many sophisticated people. I'm used to, those who are undergoing the sophistication process, about 3 to 4 feet high, shoes on the wrong feet, turned around talking to their partner until you say the word candy, and then you have their undivided attention for about 2 seconds. So, sorry. I was challenged by Miss Weaver to conduct a probability experiment for 3rd and 4th graders to teach them a little bit about probability and to come up with 4 different activities. In the Knox County school system, they do centers for math class. The teacher will teach a lesson at the beginning of the week, and she'll have some of the activities that she has come up with or found online to have the kids rotate. They go in groups, they have assigned groups. And so I decided for my 4 centers, I would use at least 3 subjects that the children really like. So I used Skittles for my first activity. I did a spin the bottle exercise, but not the normal spin the bottle. It's modified, I promise. I wouldn't encourage something like that. Then Harry Potter, because everybody these days in elementary school are into Harry Potter, and Pokemon. So I incorporated things that they would like to keep their attention. First one is called a Rainbow of Probabilities. It is a Skittles activity where everybody has a bag of Skittles. They draw a Skittle out of the bag, and then on their piece of paper they mark under which color they pulled out. They lay them all out, and once they get finished with their bag, they count how many of each color they have to get the total number, and then figure out which color they would most likely choose the most of that they would have in their bag. This is just a starter activity to introduce them to the idea of probability, learning to write the fractions and that sort of thing. I didn't actually have them sit like this, so it worked out that they actually were perfectly arranged for the picture. It proved to be very effective at helping the children understand what probability is, and it was the perfect starting point for the children, and they loved it. When you say you're going to include Skittles in the activity, they jump. Like I said, when you say candy, you have their undivided attention. The spin the bottle of probability is more, they answer the questions first and then spin the bottle after to see if they get, semi-accurate results. It's 4 to 6 players. You start out with one bottle. You answer the questions such as what's the probability of landing on yourself, the probability of landing on a girl, and the probability of landing on a boy. So we're starting out basic, and then it gets a little bit more challenging when you have 2 bottles and they have to answer the same questions, or the bottle's landing on 2 boys, or a boy or a girl, a boy and a girl, that sort of thing. And both bottles landing on yourself. This is Center 2 in action. And I actually forgot to mention something about my Skittles activity a minute ago. I did this activity on a Thursday, and then a Friday, the little girl that you see in the picture up here comes up to me and says, "Miss Kelly, guess what?" And I said, "What?" And she says, "My teacher's a little upset with you." I said, "I don't even know your teacher. How is she upset with me?" She says, "Because you already taught me the activity yesterday that she was teaching in class today." So at least I know it worked. Center 3 is a dice game based on Harry Potter. It was, introducing an activity that they would enjoy, but also have hidden math inside of it. They are supposed to roll the dice, and then I have a list of different curses based on what they roll. So they get to go back and forth, after they answer the questions. The first question was for them to figure out the probability of rolling each number. So we had a little chart, and they figured out the pattern if they couldn't answer it themselves. So once they learned the pattern, they got the hang of it, and then they were able to duel it out. Also, what's the probability of rolling a killing curse? Well, there's only one killing curse in here, so that was pretty simple for them to figure out. And then the probability of rolling a curse that started with a C. So they seem to enjoy it, and this is Center 3 in action, me helping them figure out the chart. It really helped them. Then the last center was Pokemon probability. This one was more of a packet, so it was a lot more involved, and in this exercise I introduced probability with and without replacement. So we stepped it up a notch. So you can always modify it based on what grade you're doing and what activity you're learning. So we did it based on color. They had to fill out a chart based on Pokemon color, and then one of the questions was draw a card. What's the probability of your opponent drawing the same card as you without you replacing your card? So since they had already added them up on the chart, they knew the total number and knew how many of those colors they had, so they could figure it out. So if I drew a blue Pokemon and there were 8 blue Pokemon in the deck, and the deck has 60 cards, if I don't replace mine, that leaves 59 cards and 7 blue ones. So if they draw blue, the probability. And then at the end, I had a little participant survey. Only one of them made it to this point because we had a limited amount of time and the activities took a little longer than expected. But he did enjoy the activity. He said it helped him understand probability a whole lot better. His favorite part of the activity was obviously the Pokemon. And he said he would love to see this activity in class because it's a fun way for kids like him to learn math and enjoy it more. So I didn't ask him to rate me, but he gave me 10 out of 10 every time, so I think it was successful. I very much enjoyed the opportunity to create this project for you, Ms. Weaver. Thank you. And it taught me a lot about the kids and how they interact and what games they like to play and things that I can improve on. And so hopefully it'll help me in my future when I become a teacher. I'm graduating with my AST in 2 weeks.
Our next speaker is Brian Van Valkenburg, Investigations in Aquatic Therapy, including applications for treating multiple sclerosis. And this project was sponsored by Emily Delozier and Beth Val.
So my name is Brian, and I did a series of aquatic therapy investigations, the most recent of which were applications for multiple sclerosis, and I'm currently part of the physical therapist assistant program. So the first project, and I'm just going to talk about this briefly here, is what is physical therapy? And I just really like this image. This would be like a group setting in a cold water or lap pool environment. We can also have group therapy that happens in warm water environments. Aquatic therapy is also done on an individual basis as part of physical therapy intervention. The second project that I worked on last semester was related to kinesiology. We were studying all the bones and muscles and where they attached, and I wanted to apply that to the pool, and so I got in the pool. One of the investigations was basically weight bearing, and so up here in the dark blue are different activities that I did in the water, and then I rated these. Higher numbers indicate that the activities were more difficult. And basically, as you go more deep into the water, moving from your hip to your chest to your neck, there's less weight bearing. And I thought that it would follow a pattern all the time, that as you got deeper into the water, the activity would become more difficult. But I just want you to note the ones that are starred there under the chest section. So to explain that, basically I was putting the water level right here. We call it the xiphoid process. It's the bottom part below the breastbone. And so there's this concept that we have called the center of buoyancy, which is basically just behind the breastbone. And since I wasn't immersing myself that far, I hadn't begun to float yet. And so I think what was happening was I was getting more resistance from the water and not yet floating, and that's what made those activities more difficult than I had expected. And this was exciting because I didn't know about the center of buoyancy until after I had done the experiment, and so I kind of stumbled on it myself. Then finally, the third project, I'll talk about this one a little bit more. Aquatics and multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis, or MS, is the most common autoimmune neurological condition, and there's about 400,000 cases in the US. Basically what happens in this process is there's a demyelinization of the central nervous system, and sclerosis means hardening. So basically the myelin, which allow nerve impulses to travel quickly, harden, and so that slows. And this can produce a lot of different symptoms. People usually initially go in to their doctor complaining of low back pain with blurred vision. Later it can develop incontinence, depression, there's often sexual dysfunction, and then there's this perplexing symptom of fatigue. Fatigue seems particularly disruptive because it's an invisible symptom. It's subjective, self-reported, and it's just kind of hard for doctors and patients to get a grip on what it is, and it's often very disruptive to homes. Also, because of this fatigue, there is commonly a sedentary lifestyle that develops, but then that can contribute to fatigue. But is it that they have fatigue and that helps them develop a sedentary lifestyle? So kind of a chicken or egg scenario develops with this symptom. And so a lot of the studies are trying to see if aquatic therapy can most adequately address fatigue, and heat can also often exacerbate this symptom. And so it's just important to keep in mind for aquatics. And this is why we usually do aquatic interventions for MS in cooler pool environments, about 80 degrees, which is about lap pool temperature. So I looked at a number of studies. The first one is from 1984, and this study found that there were great improvements. We improved strength, work, power, and it reduced fatigue. Then I looked at some newer studies because that one, well, it didn't have a control group, and there were only 16 participants. So then in 2001, there was a study that was conducted that found positive results, but no reduction in fatigue symptoms. It increased quality of life, improved physical, social, mental health. And so this was kind of the trend, was then I was looking at studies in the 2000s and they were finding improvements. The next one that I wanted to discuss was this quotation. The most important outcomes of aquatic therapy included freedom of movement, relaxation, energy, social interaction, and the feeling of being normal while participating in activity in the water. And I just thought that this is a really nice summation of just the benefits that you have, especially when you have people with really damaging neurological conditions, suffering from depression, that they get a social benefit and just like this freedom in the water. The last study I'm going to discuss in depth this evening was a really interesting one that compared reasons about why people participate in aquatic activity. And this one was unique in that it compared the reasons that people with MS participated to that of master swimmers. And it wasn't surprising that both groups said that it elevates their mood. It wasn't particularly surprising that MS aquatic participants rated emotional reasons as 3 of their top 5, which kind of goes along with the last quotation from the previous slide. But what was really surprising to me was that the master swimmers and not the MS group rated that it improves my balance in their top 5 reasons for participating in aquatics. So just to wrap up, I examined 3 more studies and they all found more benefits about aquatics, a lot of the social aspect, a lot of strength gains. There's an interesting case where there are improvements with warm water, but on the whole they kind of disagreed on what the benefits were, but they were all finding benefits. So I just wanted to close with this quote: wouldn't it be nice to have a whole house of water so I could be this mobile? And this came from one of the participants of one of the earlier studies. So thank you all for attending. Thank you, Emily and Beth.
Jessica Morgan will now read for us several poems that she wrote in a project entitled In My Vision, sponsored by Dr. Ralph Monday.
I'm glad to be here this evening. My name is Jessica Morgan, and I attend Scott County campus. I believe I'll start off by reading you guys one of my poems here. This one is titled Whispering Season. Hear now the wind it speaks, like an old folk way, ancient tongues running through the valley, carrying with it a new season. Obedient, disciplined trunks, awaiting their command, waving in response. It is time. Tips of barren limbs reply to the calling. A pale pink and yellow blanket replaces the brown scenery. Even the birds change their tune. The wind continues to carry its voice, weaving in and out of the hillsides, commanding spring to rise. I'm glad to be here this evening to present to you guys my very first honors project. After successfully completing my first semester, I was really motivated to do really well in my second semester. So when this opportunity to participate in this project was presented to me, I couldn't pass it up. This project meant more to me than just the extra credits, but it was a chance for me to step out of my box a little bit, to do something a little intimidating, and to forward my college career. This semester I took my very first English course, where I decided to take on a project that sounded very intimidating. Writing poetry was not something that I had ever done before, but in this class I quickly found a love for the literature. My project consisted of me creating 20 poems on my own and combining them into a creatively bound book. It was challenging, but through this book I was able to put the things that are most dear to me and most controversial to me into my own words. And I believe I'll read you 2 more. This one's titled The Moon and Mona. The moon arose just for me to experience its light through the oak leaves. I'll sit here through the night and watch you cross the sky. Mona Lisa in your face, looking down at the world, observing, watching me, judging, contemplating. Your subtle features staring down from my youth until now. I gaze upon your face throughout my life, wondering, do you see what I see? Does anybody see the moon in its face as I do? This one was probably my favorite and probably the hardest for me. This one's called Time's Wonder. Boundaries of time, numbers placed in order, mark specific places in life, an apparatus for limitation, bounding my existence, compelled to rush. Unenjoyable moments pass by, they too bound by time's burden. Today's choices whisper tomorrow, a reminder that the possibilities of my future are bound by an unconscious desire for immediate satisfaction. To acquire everything now, insecure and uncertain in the amount of time remaining. If time is represented using numbers, is it possible to calculate remaining time? Infinity of numbers, infinity of time, simply running out of time, relative to my location and movement, or the whole universe? What is more precious, amounts of time or quality of life? I'm glad I was able to present this to you guys. This is my very first project, and I hope to continue on throughout my next semesters and do more. Thank you for listening.
Our final presenter tonight is Matthew Pittman, discussing the blood trace of blood flow, sponsored by Dr. Debbie Palatinas.
My name's Matthew, and I'm going to be presenting the blood flow to the body. As you can see there, I made a little clay model. So my presentation is trace the blood flow to the body. First we have the pulmonary circulation, which is the deoxygenated circulation, which contains with the right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary trunk, and the right lung. Point 1 is going to be the right atrium, which receives blood from the superior and inferior vena cavas along with the coronary sinus, and it contains a valve after it called the tricuspid valve. Point 2, as I just said, is the tricuspid valve, and it is called the tricuspid valve because it has 3-point lock cups. And it leads the blood from the right atrium into the right ventricle, and it's called the right atrioventricular valve. And the reason it's called the right atrioventricular valve is because it's kind of self-explanatory if you think about it. Like, it's connecting the right atrium to the right ventricle, so it's kind of combining the two, being a bridge between and the gap. Point 3 is the right ventricle, and it is located on the anterior portion of the heart, and it contains the pulmonary valve. The pulmonary valve is going to take the blood from the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk, and it is also called the pulmonary semilunar valve. And one good way that I always remember this valve is from semilunar, I always think of a half moon because it has lunar in it. Even though I don't really think it looks like the moon, but still, good way to remember it. And the pulmonary trunk divides into 2 smaller arteries, which is very complex because the arteries and capillaries are very tiny vessels that go all throughout the body. And they, more in particular, carry the blood to the lungs. And then the lungs, the carbon dioxide is dropped off, and then oxygen is picked up. Then after the lungs is the systemic circulation, which is the oxygen circulation. And it contains the pulmonary veins, left atrium, bicuspid valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, the aorta, and the coronary sinus, superior and inferior vena cava. Point 1 of the oxygenated systemic circulation is the pulmonary veins, and it receives oxygenated blood from the lungs, and there's 4 pulmonary veins. Point 2, left atrium forms most of the heart's base, which seems like if it forms most of the base, I could imagine it's kind of like more of the bottom part of the heart. And it contains the bicuspid valve. The bicuspid valve receives blood from the left atrium, and it is called the bicuspid valve because it has 2 cusps. And another good name for it is the mitral valve because it looks like a 2-sided bishop's hat. And since it is on the left side, then it connects the atrium and the left atrium and left ventricle is called the left atrioventricular valve. And a fun fact, as I've said, valves are atrioventricular because they connect the atrium to the ventricles. And then there's the left ventricle, which is the thickest chamber of the heart, and it forms the apex, which the apex sort of seems like if the atrium forms the bottom, the apex kind of reminds me of like the top. So yeah, that's a good area for difference between the atrium and ventricle. Point 5, the aortic valve receives blood from the left ventricle, and also called the aortic semilunar valve. It sends blood up through the ascending aorta, and sometimes the blood may go off in a little bitty coronary arteries all throughout the body. And the rest of it goes through the aortic arch and the descending aorta. And the aorta is the last location of the oxygenated blood flow, and sends the blood through small blood capillaries, which loses oxygen and carbon dioxide. And the aorta is sort of like this, I guess you'd say it like a little curve that comes up from the heart, and it has 3 little stems, is the best way you can explain it. And if I remember correctly, I think them are called the coronary arteries, or the coronary veins, either one of those two. But so the ascending aorta is going to be more of the top half of the aorta that descends down more into the body between the lungs and from the heart. Then the final location is the coronary sinus and superior and inferior vena cava. And this is a tricky, these are tricky because it's hard to differentiate which one is really the end of the circulation, because you could say that it ends here or the aorta. The aorta I've known is the best place to say that the blood flow ends and basically filtering blood. But you could also say it starts at the coronary sinus and the superior and inferior cava. And so these are kind of going to be where the pulmonary circulation restarts. That's why I say it's kind of tricky. And it is the beginning of the deoxygenated blood flow. And there's kind of like a little overview of the structure of the heart. And down at the bottom it's kind of confusing, but it's kind of like if you start on the right side and then kind of just go all the way over to the left and just keep making a circle, that's the cycle of the blood flow in order. And just as a cool little fact, if you notice that there's not very much functional description of any of these vessels, and the reason is because the lungs, since they are the ones that puts oxygen in the lungs and takes carbon dioxide out, they're the most functional part of the pulmonary system, because in the alveoli of the lungs there's a gas exchange, because when during pulmonary ventilation, when you're inspiring, you're bringing the oxygen in, and then when you're expiring, you're taking carbon dioxide out. And so the lungs are basically like the functioning filter of the pulmonary circulation that filters the carbon dioxide out and the oxygen in, and takes it all all through the circulation and all throughout the body. And that is my presentation.
You may have seen on the back of your program where we had 114 students do 233 projects this year. That was at last count. That's one of our best years ever, maybe our best year ever. If not, the best year we've had, it's one of the very best. We want to take just a moment to recognize the students who presented a project here tonight, and also the students who will be graduating this year who have earned enough honors credits to receive either an honors associate designation on their diploma or an honors diploma. We're going to start by issuing a certificate and a pen to those students who participated tonight. So please come forward as we call your name. Jason Brown. Matthew Pittman. Jessica Morgan. Brian von Valkenburg. Shelley Edwards. Caitlin Sexton. Wanda Hinton. Rachel Andrews. Joanna Parton. Sandra Marita Frazier. Kelly Bigger. Haley Davis. Paige Rose. Haley Roberson. Christy White. And Caitlin Lawland. Let's have a hand for presenters tonight. Also, I'm going to read the names of our graduates who earned either 12 semester credit hours of honors credits that qualify them for the honors associate, or they earned at least 18 to earn an honors diploma. Not many of them are here tonight, but some are, so as I call your names, please come forward to receive your medallion. Austin Tyler Balcom, Shelley M. Edwards, If you would just stay for a moment. Dakota Lee Harris, Jessica Leanne Hayes, Peyton Brian Jenkins, Adam Christopher King, Jessica Leanne Knight, Julius Jacob Krupp Jr., Ariel Lesk McFadden, Caitlin Ann Pellucci, Margaret Teresa Pierce, Danielle Brooke Rokiski, Kelly Ann Bigger, Shelby Lynn Finn, Heather Desiree Danielle Friels, Avina Luana Ruby South Jones, Jonathan Eric Moore, Kaylee Leanne Morgan, Aubrey Hannah Riggs, and Caitlin Marie Rakowski. Well, we had two show up tonight. Let's give them a hand. Well, that concludes the evening's events. We appreciate everybody taking the time and effort to come and see the great work that our students do. Hope you'll come back again next year when we do it again. Have a safe trip home and enjoy the weekend. Thank you.